Should you go to Art Academy? That's something I want to talk about today. In the meantime, you can see me draw based on the reference you also see on the screen, and you can, perhaps if you feel like it, you can draw along with me. You can see me draw here, but otherwise maybe we can just talk about whether you should go to Art Academy or not. I myself, I have been to Art Academy, and for 3 years. It was at the end of the third year, maybe 10 weeks before the end, I quit. And the reason was, it was a really great art academy. They taught you a lot of the fundamentals, and they got us to fill sketchbooks, go outside and draw from observation outside. And we did still lifes, which is also very interesting. I'll have to do a video on that once where they had some really great insights in how you design a still life to draw from. And we did model drawing classes, of course, and we did painting sessions, and we copied masters, and we had art history lessons, and it was really a great basis. The reason I left was, at that moment I knew I wanted to become a story illustrator. And the course was basically really about making you a painter who can make paintings you can hang on a wall. And I just knew that was not what I wanted to do. If I had stayed, I would have had to go to a fourth year and then a fifth year where you make final products, etc. So it would have taken me another 2 years. So that's lesson number one, is first figure out what you want to do, and then find the education that helps you get there, basically. So that would be an important thing to keep in mind. I am not sure that if there were art academies near me where I could have gone, where they did teach the things I wanted to learn, but it was a great start. I mean, it's a great basis. And another thing you have to remember is, in the end, people won't ask you about your diploma. If they want to hire you as an artist or whatever, if you're making drawings, the diploma doesn't matter really. If you're looking for a customer, they might look at your portfolio, they might ask you to work with you on a small project to see how that works. But usually I think people look at your work and decide they want you to make work for them. Nobody ever asks you about your diploma, so it's not about the piece of paper, it's about what you learn. Another thing, a great thing about Art Academy is the networking, the opportunities to network, to meet other artists. And that's one thing I wanted to figure out, and that's why this thing is premiering, because then we can chat. I was wondering, how would you go about designing an online community where artists can talk together? There are many places right now, but for instance, Instagram is not a place where you can really communicate with other artists in any meaningful way. You have Reddit groups, but they're not very active. And I think there are Facebook groups, and artists are not very active on Twitter. So I don't know where there's actually a really thriving community where artists communicate, just to talk, talk shop, talk about details of making art. So that is maybe something you can do with premieres, where artists can talk to each other through the chats. So that was something I was considering. But one of the important things I learned at the Art Academy was that basically I've come to realize that learning a skill is a skill in itself. You can sort of learn to learn a skill. Basically, whether you're learning to make music or learning to draw or learning to program or learning any skill, cooking, etc., it's always the basics are the same. You have to practice a lot. Maybe you should not have to practice every day, because that's too heavy. You cannot just draw every day. Sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes you have to do things that day and there's just no time. And you have to be nice to yourself, be kind to yourself. Life happens. So you don't have to draw every day. That's another, I think, a topic for another video really. But so you have to draw a lot, and you have to understand what the fundamentals are of that area, so you can practice that. And you can copy the masters to discover the tricks they used, and you have to learn about the history of your art form, and basically the conventions and the canon of masterpieces. And all these things you can learn. And it really doesn't matter. I mean, it can be, with music, you learn to read notes, and you learn the chords, and you learn music theory, and you practice every day, and maybe you learn to play a certain song, an existing song. And the same happens with drawing. You draw every day, you copy the masters, you learn the fundamentals like, perspective, anatomy, etc., etc. And with programming, it's the same. There is such a thing as a fundamental, which is basically if you learn a certain type of programming language, you can always very easily learn the next programming language, because it's learning about how to solve problems. And it's again about practicing every day, and it is again about trying to create programs other people have already created, so basically copying the master. So each time it's the same model. And so now we come to the meat of the question. Do you have to go to an art academy? In principle, you don't have to. If you understand this mechanism, you can design your own school. Basically, you can because right now online there are so many courses. You have Proco, you have What's Atelier, you have Schoolism, and many other places where you can really learn a lot, where they have excellent courses, great courses. I've done several on several of these platforms, and they really are great. And that's one of the benefits. Like I said, the Art Academy was preparing me to become a painter, and I don't want to become a painter. And so what I can start to figure out is, hey, I want to learn about storytelling. As it happens, Schoolism has a few courses that could help me. And in that way, you can sort of start to turn it upside down. You can figure out, okay, this is the type of art I want to make, and then you can pick the course online and find the teacher or mentor that can help you. And you can pick and choose, and you can mix and match and combine different teachers and see how they say different things. Because that was an interesting thing about the Art Academy. The teachers tended to say different opposing things. One teacher would say one thing and another teacher would say another thing, and they would be contradicting each other. So one teacher would say, hey, you should use as little turpentine as possible because it breaks down the linseed oil in oil painting, and so you should not use that to water down, you should not use it as a medium, only to clean things. And then another teacher would say, hey, make a quick underdrawing, use some turpentine. So they would contradict each other, but in a certain way they were not, because they were always all trying to focus on, you making great, beautiful works. So the idea was always the same, but so it was really interesting to hear them contradict each other constantly, and that translates to online a bit. You see a lot of courses that do different things. They don't contradict each other as much, but. There are so many great resources online right now. It's amazing if you think about it. I mean, there's many YouTube videos where you can learn. And in my channel, what I want to, I've decided I don't want to compete with all these educational resources because they are already so good. I mean, how can I possibly become better than them? How can I? So I'm trying to do something different. So what you see here, example, is a simple drawing exercise, and sort of as a challenge, maybe you can copy it together with me, because this is what I draw to practice, and that is just what it is. It's practice. Because my idea was, I had this Instagram account where many people followed me, and I saw that tutorials were very successful, and people would bookmark them, like them, and forward them to other people. And I got the feeling that they thought they were becoming better artists just by browsing through these tutorials. And that's not true. You have to pick one tutorial and then do it. So I started to feel guilty for making these tutorials because I was distracting people away from their sketchbooks. And what you need to do is you need to draw. And I know it's not a popular message. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm talking in this video about whether you should do Art Academy. Yeah, so I mean, worst case, you have something to listen to, right? But maybe you can you can open your sketchbook and draw along with me. That's also a possibility. But if you understand, because like I said, learning a craft is also a craft. Learning a skill is also a skill. So you can learn to learn things, and if you understand the mechanism of how to learn something, if you understand that you have to practice a lot and try to draw it every day, you can't draw every day. And if you understand that you do have to understand the fundamentals, and that you can learn a lot by copying from the masters. Understand that with copying from the masters, I mean as practice, right? So you shouldn't pretend that it's yours. You should always credit the original artist, and you should never sell it. It's basically you're working off copyrighted material. Which is in this drawing, I mean, I'm looking at reference online, so I am copying existing reference. As an artist, you can only work from reference. If you work from memory, your memory retains very little of what things actually look like. So you have to work from reference. And at the same time, I mean, the internet is so full of reference right now. So I think you don't really need an art academy, but there are a few problems if you don't go to art academy. One is that there are things you don't even know you don't know. I noticed, for instance, I see with many comics creators, they are self-taught. So that's like I said, they didn't go to art academy. And they basically they started as a child and they started copying Spider-Man and Batman, and that's how they learned to draw. And I'm sorry to say, but I can see, and they do work with composition. They look at how the eye is guided through the page, but the page as a whole is often not very well designed. And I think that is one of the reasons comics are not as popular with a bigger audience. Because I also, if I pick up a comic and I look at I open it and I see a page full of detail, I just get tired of the thought alone of having to just, parse all that detail, understand all that detail, look at all that detail, examine all that detail. I get exhausted just thinking of that. And I'm sure that if these pages were designed better, if the artist had taken more care to look at the abstract shapes on the page to basically make it simpler, create places where the eye can rest, etc. People would have more fun just looking at the page as a whole and then getting sucked into the details. So design is a part where they lack certain knowledge, and that's something that can happen because there are things you don't even know you don't know, and those things someone has to tell you, someone has to point these out. I had these things pointed out to me by designers and the Art Academy, where they also focus, on composition, the abstract shapes in an image. And another thing you miss if you don't go to Art Academy is, like I said, community, networking, connections with other people, other artists. Maybe you can work up together. The thing is, if you work together, you challenge each other. You see that other people are doing better, and then you try to become as good as them, or you can look at each other and see how you do things and learn tricks from it. One time I saw someone, this was not at Academy, this was at, I think, at a sketch scroll. I saw someone take a fountain pen and turn it upside down and push with the back end of the nib on the paper to create the effect of leaves, of tree leaves. And I thought that was brilliant. And those are the kinds of things you can learn just by looking at how other artist works, how they draw. And if you work in isolation, you miss that opportunity. You miss the opportunity to be inspired by others, to learn tricks from others, to be challenged by others. And there is this networking effect. You might have an exposition together one day, and if you're working in isolation, it can be it's also much more difficult. So and the Art Academy has structure. So you do have model drawing class on Tuesday, and you have still life painting on Wednesday. So you have these fixed dates. So it's not, and that just makes it easier to keep going because there are fixed moments when you are working, and there are fixed moments where you have to do these things. So you just show up and you start, and that makes it easier to keep that routine going. At the same time, you could save a lot of money by not going to Art Academy and learning by yourself. But you need to find ways to discover the things you don't even know you don't know. That might be because what you could do is also look at other fields, maybe do some sculpting, maybe look at graphic design, so you can pick up ideas from other fields and maybe discover the things that you are missing. And that way you might discover, that design is an important part of. But having said that, there are really great online courses also on design. Marcel van Draf has a great course on composition. So, to summarize, I think it's safe to say that you have to sort of figure out first what you want to become, what kind of artist you have to become, and then look at the art academies and which courses they give. Do they have the course that will push you ahead in that direction? Are they training you to learn? Are they teaching you the thing that you want to learn there? Another thing to consider is that Art Academy is only a start, right? It's only 4 years, and art is lifelong learning. You will learn for the rest of your life. I noticed with the Art Academy I went to, the 4 years, they trained us to sort of look at, put your fingers up and look at a frame, and look at what you see exactly in that square, and then exactly paint that. It's really literally copy from observation. And the only compositional aspect that they had there was basically how you framed what you were looking at. Whereas, in the past, artists would be much more creative. They would insert elements, they would move elements around or remove elements. They might use the shapes of shades to sort of modify those shapes so that you got beautiful shapes on the page. Where it's not accurate, where if you look carefully at the paintings, the light could not have been like that, but they changed the shadow shapes to make more beautiful looking shapes on the page. So they changed what they saw. They changed. They put the beauty of the image before. They made that more important than copying exactly what you saw. Also, what they didn't teach you at that academy was storytelling. I mean, they literally showed us how to copy from observation. But that's not if you want to tell stories, you have to be able to construct things, and you have to work with metaphors, and it's a whole different ball game altogether. And they were just looking at the abstract shapes on the page. And with storytelling, a lot much more happens. But at the same time, in 4 years, there is only so much you can learn. So you're not a complete artist yet when you come from art academy. There's still so much you have to learn after that, which is great because that's what makes art making fun. You grow, you learn, discover new things, and that is the fun part of it. But art academy is only the beginning. 4 years is not enough. Is not nearly enough to learn everything about art, about making art. There's so many distinct fields. I mean, the people who finish my art academy can't possibly become storyboard artists, of course. I mean, they don't know anything about storytelling. The storytelling, there's so much involved. If you copy the frames of a film, you learn so much about storytelling. They use all sorts of different things. They use that one person towers over another person. That sort of depicts power, of course. They can use the background shapes in the background to suggest an emotion. They can use abstract shapes to make it feel like someone is enclosed between two bigger things. They can use someone looking out of a window, maybe sort of as a metaphor for someone being imprisoned inside somewhere. And then sometimes they zoom out and then it becomes really small, and that makes it look like the person is really lonely in the world. And there's so much, these are just a few examples off the top of my head. So that's an entire different world where you tell stories by using visual elements, by using visual metaphors. And that they didn't teach it at art. 4 years is very short. You can't possibly become a general purpose, good at everything artist in 4 years. So having a teacher or having it's better to have, if you choose something, it's best to have many different teachers. So it's better to do lots of different courses online if you have the money for it, because it just adds. They all add something to the whole. So coming at the end of this video, I realized that I'm kind of confusing you, because now you probably still don't know whether you should go to Art Academy or not. But one thing you should figure out is where you want to be 5 years from now. What kind of artist do you want to be? And then look at all the courses online or art academies, see which one fits the bill. And find out, one thing you can do is look at the art academies, look at the courses they give, and see if you can figure it out for yourself. Find an online course or maybe a book, or maybe there are websites or tutorials on YouTube. There are lots of places right now where you can learn. I hope this has been useful. Thank you for listening.